leading from the middle can be very challenging. If you're a staff pastor, then you have to lead with a certain degree of finesse because you have your lead pastor and maybe an executive pastor over you, but then you also have teams and groups and congregants and people like that under you. And so you're caught in this middle ground of having to lead both ways. And it takes a little bit more finesse to understand how to manage both leading up as well as leading down, as well as leading sideways with your peers who are also on staff with you. And today what I want to do is I want to show you two ways that you can be a self-starter, which is key to being an effective leader when you are in the middle. Let's get started. So the big question is this: how do pastors like us who remain focused on the mission of Jesus and serving our communities without being distracted by everything in the world around us, how do we increase our effectiveness while living a lifestyle that doesn't compromise our health, our families, or our personal relationships with Jesus? That's the question this podcast is going to answer. I'm Dr. Brandon Party Cooper, and welcome to the Ministry Hackers Podcast. Welcome to this episode of the Ministry Hackers Podcast. I hope you are doing wonderfully wherever you are and whatever it is you are doing. I hope this episode comes to you in a season where God is doing great things in you, where you have time with your family, where you are planning your summer vacations and your getaways, and you have some downtime in front of you. I know ministry is challenging and tough, and most of us work 40, 50, some of us 60 plus hours a week. But I want to challenge you. In this episode, I want to challenge you as a part of the Ministry Hacker community to find some margin in your life to help you live a healthy, sustaining, fulfilling lifestyle that's really your dream life in ministry. And that's what we're all about here, is living that dream life that God's designed for you. And so I'm so glad you're here with us. So glad that you're joining us in this episode. Things are going wonderfully. It's beautiful here in sunny Virginia Beach, Virginia. And I'm just excited to spend time with you today. And before we get into the content, I want to remind you that we have partnered with Pastor Keith Trump and his course, Getting Greek. This course is a great course if you have ever thought about learning how to read New Testament Greek. If you've ever been studying your word, looking at the New Testament, reading it, and said, man, I really wish I understood more about how that word fit here, or what does that word actually mean, or how does it fit in this context? If you've ever wondered that, and you've wanted to just read the original text, the original Greek text, well, I want to encourage you to check out Pastor Keith's course. His partnership with us here at Ministry Hackers has been great. We have loved being a part of it with him, and seeing this course make such an impact on those who've taken it. And so this course, it's simple, it's easy. He takes very complex concepts of learning how to read Greek. He takes it very simply, breaking it down so that you and I and anybody else that's never taken a Greek course can understand it, can read it, and can get deep into not only their Bible study, but for us as pastors, help us develop our sermons a little bit better, go a little bit deeper than what we have been able to in the past. He's taken this course all over the world, and he's brought it here with us here at Ministry Hackers to partner with us and to make it available to you. And so I want to encourage you to go to brandonpartycooper.com/getting Greek, and you can get the book, or you can get the course right there. And you can check it out, and you can visit, excuse me, you can visit the site. You can see the Getting Greek course. You can get it right there. It's a great course to dive into. It's a great course to be a part of, and a great course for you to just take your own devotional life deeper, as well as to take your sermon prep and your sermon delivery and your discipleship programs to go a little bit deeper than what you have been in the past. And so again, go to brandonpartycooper.com/getting Greek, and you will be able to start today learning New Testament Greek and understanding your New Testament scriptures a little bit deeper than you have in the past. So again, brandonpartycooper.com/getting Greek, and you can get started today. All right. Okay. So I have been a staff pastor most of my career. And one thing that I know, and I'm sure if you're listening here, you're a staff pastor, you know as well as I do, that leading in the middle is very challenging because you really aren't in charge. You are in charge of your department or your areas. But at the end of the day, you have either a lead pastor or an executive pastor, maybe your board, you answer to them. Somewhere you have somebody over you that you're answering to, you're reporting to. But then you also have your own teams, especially those who have whole departments. So if you're a youth pastor or a kids pastor, in some sort of role like that, you have a whole department of people. So you have teams and individuals that you lead under you, as well as leading above. And so sometimes what we tend to do, and I know I've run into this in the past, and I've had to navigate through it, is when you're leading an area or department, we tend to, as leaders and as pastors, we tend to switch over into I'm in charge, because everything in your department comes to you. And I'm not saying that in a prideful way or a control way or a power grab way, although some of us can fall into that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we're in charge of this department or this area or this team or this group of people, and everything from that flows up to us. And the natural tendency of leadership is that we focus on the things that we're in charge of because we're ultimately responsible for it. And we know that if something goes wrong, something doesn't work out, something falls apart, whatever, we're responsible. And so we have this tendency to focus down on the leadership below us because we're responsible for those people and those results and those departments and those ministries, and we want to make sure they run well. And what we tend to do is we tend to forget that we have the responsibility to lead upward as well as to lead sideways. So leading upwards to our lead pastor or our board or our executive pastor, whoever it is that we answer to, and then lead sideways to those around us. So whether it's our fellow staff pastors is usually what that means. And so if I'm the youth pastor, well, I have a kids pastor that I'm working with. I have maybe a worship pastor that I'm working with. Whoever it is that I'm working with, I have to lead sideways as well as upwards. But my focuses tend to be leading downward. And so what I want to do today is I want to give you 2 quick ways that you can focus on being a self-starter. Because being a self-starter is key to leading upward and sideways. Because really, when you're on a team, so leading sideways, and when you're serving a lead pastor, what they really want to do is they want to make sure that you can get things done, that you can handle things well, and that you can focus your attention on not only taking care of the stuff that you're responsible of, but also on managing being a part of a team. And being a self-starter is one of the key things you can do to be a great team member. And I think that this is important because a lot of times when we're leading, we forget that we're on a team and we need to manage the team we're on just as well as we manage the teams that we're over. And when you're a self-starter, it's kind of like riding a bike. So, you remember the days that you rode a bike, or when maybe you still do. But I remember when I used to ride a bike and I would sit there and I had my cool BMX bike that I like to do tricks on. And when I would, and usually my bike was bigger than I was. And so, I would climb on the bike and I would get that one foot on the pedal so that I could lift myself back up onto the bike all the way up and get my other foot on the pedal. But what was always difficult is I would get myself up, but immediately, as soon as I would get myself up, I would have to start pedaling because if I didn't, then I would fall over. And so I would lift myself up, have both feet on the pedals, and I'd pretty much be standing up, and I would push with all my might to get those pedals to go forward, to get moving, so that the bike would start moving forward before it fell over, and I had to start all over again. Now, once I would get on my bike and I'd start pedaling, and I would get going, and I'd be super fast, and be flying all around my neighborhood, well, then I really didn't have to pedal very hard to keep going because I could just push a little bit, pedal a couple times, then ride and stand and do all my tricks and everything else. I didn't have to do a lot to keep it going because the bike was already moving. But man, getting up on that bike and trying to get it started was so hard. Well, you on a team is kind of the same way as that bike. If you're always having to get started, if your pastor is always having to push you and challenge you and say, hey, let's get this done, or let's jump in here, or let's do this. If they're always having to do that, it takes way more effort for them to lead you. If you're a self-starter, though, then you're already moving. All they have to do is say, hey, let's redirect this over here, or hey, let's focus our attention more over there, because you're already taking initiative, you're already jumping on board, you're already showing that you can get yourself moving, and they don't have to do that. All they have to do is point you in the right direction. I've had staff under me, team members that I've had under me, where I have to constantly be getting them to move, constantly asking the question, hey, what are you doing today? Hey, what's going on? Hey, where are we in this? Hey, what are you doing right now so that we can get moving on this other thing. What's holding you back? What obstacles are keeping you from getting this done? I've had to constantly talk to them and get them moving. And honestly, it's way more work to manage somebody who's like that than somebody who's always moving forward and getting things done. And so for you, and what we want to talk about today is how to do that, how to be that self-starter, how to be the bike already in motion instead of the bike that's sitting there and somebody has to get you moving. And so again, I want to give you 2 ways you can be a self-starter and really focus in and get yourself moving, so all your leadership above you and leadership next to you, all they have to do is give you guidance, direction, come on board alongside you, and keep moving because you're already in motion. So the first thing that I want to encourage you to do is to look for things that consistently need done and then do it. Look for things that consistently need done and start doing it. Now, I know that we have job descriptions and we have responsibilities. We have areas that we're over. And our tendency can be to say, well, that's not really my area, or that's not really my responsibility. But here's the thing. When you're a staff pastor, when you are on a team of ministry leaders, the reality is that all the ministry comes to someone. Now, if you say, well, that's not really me, well, what you're essentially saying is that's somebody else's. That's somebody else's responsibility. It's somebody else's problem. I don't want to take that on, which is fine. But the reality is that it all falls to somebody, especially because not everything falls into a clear category. There are lots of things in ministry that don't fall under the lead pastor's role. It doesn't really fall under the executive pastor's role or the worship pastor or the kids pastor or the youth pastor. They're just things that need done. And the team members that say, hey, I know it's not my responsibility, but I'm just going to do it because it consistently needs done and somebody needs to do it and I'm going to do it so it's not on somebody else's plate. The ones who do that show their value, number one, and number two are showing that they're willing to do whatever needs done. And so let's say, let's say that every Wednesday you have a women's Bible study that comes in and they take over this one room in the church, and every Wednesday it needs to be set up, and they really like this, they like their coffee set up or whatever. Every Wednesday this happens and somebody has to do it. And every week it's kind of like, well, who's going to do it this week and who's responsible? Well, I have other things I have to do. And there's this constant battle. What if you just said, you know what, guys, I'll just take care of it. I'll just do it. I'll just take care of it. Don't you guys worry about it. I will take care of it. It's consistently needing done and you are willing to step up and do it. Well, what happens is because you're willing to do it, sure, you will probably get left doing it for a while. But as a lead pastor, what I see though is hey, you're willing to take the initiative. You're willing to step up and say, hey, I'll take this on myself. And so what I, as the lead pastor, will then do is say, you know what? You've been doing such a great job with this, and I appreciate you taking the initiative to do it, but I want you to focus your attention over here, and I'm going to get so-and-so to do it. Now the lead pastor is stepping in and is assigning that responsibility to someone else who is maybe less busy than you, who is maybe less willing to do it, or maybe whose responsibility really falls under their umbrella, and removing you from the equation and saying, hey, I want you to focus your time and attention on this project or in this area or whatever. But what the ultimate thing is they've seen you, lead pastor has seen you, your team has seen you be willing to take the initiative, to be a self-starter and to dive right in. And the thing is oftentimes these are menial tasks that nobody wants to do. When you are willing to do that, you're showing that you are willing to take a servant posture with your team, and you're willing to serve your lead pastor, and you're willing to serve your team members. And that's huge. That's vital. And most of the time, your lead pastor and your team members will recognize that. They will appreciate that. And it will build trust with every one of your team members, as well as your lead pastor. And that's one of the key things you have to have with them, is that when you're on a team, you have to trust each other. And by doing things, by taking the initiative and looking for things that consistently need done and doing them, you're showing that you're trustworthy, you can be a self-starter, that you will serve your team, you'll serve your congregation, you'll serve your lead pastor, and you'll do what needs to be done. And that's huge when you're leading from the middle. So that's the first thing. The second thing that you can do to be a self-starter is to look for opportunities to do more rather than look for the opportunity to hit the door. And this comes from my own experience when I was young and I was in youth ministry and I was an intern at this great church with this great pastor Craig, and I would I worked alongside him and Pastor Dave, and they taught me so many things. But one of the things that I learned more by watching the other interns that I worked with is that, and there was one in particular where we would be given assignments, or we'd be given things that we have to do throughout the day, or responsibilities that were on our plate. Every day we'd come in, here are the things you got to do. Well, pretty consistently, what I would notice is that at the end of my responsibilities, I didn't have much of a life. I didn't have anything else going on. I loved being in youth ministry. I loved working with Craig and Dave. And so honestly, that's just where I wanted to be. That was the place I wanted to be. So please don't think this was some great insight that I had or some, huge, strategic advantage that I had. It wasn't. I didn't have a life. And so I loved ministry and I loved working with Craig and Dave. And so this is where I wanted to be. And so when I would get done with my responsibilities or whatever it is was given to me that day, I would go to Craig and I would say, hey, Craig, what else can I do? What more can I do today? What else do you need done? How can I help you? That was what other opportunities are there for me to help? There was one other intern, though, in particular, and pretty much every day, when he was done, he was like, hey guys, I finished this up. Here's this, here's that. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. He was looking for the time and the moment that he would get stuff done and he could hit the door and head home. And he had a lot more of an interesting life than I did. He had a lot more friends, a lot more things to do and whatever. And it wasn't because I was smarter or sharper or anything else. It was simply because I didn't have anything else to do, so I just stuck around. But what happened was, over time, my role continued to grow. My role, responsibilities grew. I had more things that were on my plate, more people I was responsible for, more leadership opportunities were given to me, and this other interns diminished over time. And it was because I was willing to step up and say, hey, what more needs done? I was the self-starter that dove in and did more. And again, before anybody thinks that there's anything great about me, that's not the case. I just want you to show how something inadvertently on my end, being a bored college student with not a lot of friends, actually led into a greater role of leadership. Because I was willing to say, hey, what else needs done? Rather than, hey, I'm done with my responsibilities and I'm leaving. I was willing to step up and say, hey, how can I help more? And when your lead pastor sees that, when your team members see that, when you get done with your responsibilities for the day and it's 3:30 and you have nothing left really you can get done that day, and you knock on their door and say, hey, I've got another hour. How can I help you today? Or is there something I can do for you? Is there something I can take off your plate? When you ask that, I can't even tell you what that does for your team and for your lead pastor, because it shows that you're willing to go outside of your role, outside of your responsibilities, and you're willing to help others. And when you're willing to do that, when you're willing to take the initiative and be a self-starter and say, hey, I know that I'm done with my stuff, but I want to help you guys with your stuff. When you do that, again, builds incredible trust. It builds incredible camaraderie with your team. It takes your team to a deeper level of, hey, we're in this together, rather than, hey, we're doing these things on our own. And so I want to encourage you to be willing to ask for more opportunities to do more, rather than looking to hit the door as soon as things are done. Because when you do that, you show your willingness to be a self-starter and to get stuff done and to invest in the ministries that are not your responsibility, that you're not really responsible for, that don't fall under you. But you're willing to help your fellow pastors out, your team members, and you're willing to help your lead pastor alleviate what's on his plate, alleviate the massive amount of tasks that lie on his shoulders. You're willing to alleviate that and help him out. When you're willing to do that, you become invaluable to the team. You become hugely important to the success of the ministry and the service to your congregation, and you show yourself that you can effectively lead no matter where you are, whether it's on the top or in the middle. You can lead effectively, and that's huge. That's a huge key into your own personal ministry success, as well as the success of whatever ministries you are leading. And so, again, be a self-starter. Be willing to take the initiative. Be willing to go out of your way. Be willing to serve others even when you have no reason to. Be willing to take on responsibilities that are not yours to help your fellow pastors out, to help your lead pastor out. And you do that by taking the initiative and looking for things that are consistently being done and doing them, and looking for more opportunities rather than looking for the opportunity to hit the door. Do those two things, show your desire to be a self-starter, and you will start to see your favor in the eyes of your team members as well as your lead pastor really grow. Loyalty and trust and camaraderie will get greater, and you will see the dividends pay long term because you were willing to do what others were not willing to do, and you were willing to be a self-starter and get yourself moving so nobody else has to get you moving. Alrighty? I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next episode.